We're joined by Councilmember Kshama Sawant of the Seattle City Council. And Councilmember, thank you so much for joining us. I want to start out by talking about some impressions of your press event on last Friday and kind of what kind of week that was for you. And I want to start out by asking why was it important to you at that event to talk about and reiterate your position as a Marxist and a scientific socialist explicitly at that particular moment?
I think at this moment in history, actually, we have young people, not only in the United States, but worldwide, really questioning the system of capitalism itself, really wondering if the system is even going to work for us. Clearly, a lot of people have understood that the climate crisis and the climate catastrophe really is not going to be averted on the basis of capitalism. We really need something different. And what that is, they might not be clear about. But the fact is that more and more young people now are disenchanted from the status quo and are looking for something different. And at that moment, especially in that context, especially, it was really important for us to clarify, and we are going to continue to do this, clarify and distill the lessons from why is it that we, when the ruling class threw everything at us, were able to defeat this right-wing big business backed recall in a December election sandwiched between two of the most traveled holidays. And in the midst of voter suppression, we were able to, and millions of dollars being spent by corporate landlords and CEOs and corporate executives, we were still able to win our victory. And yet in the November election, many progressive Democrats lost their elections, not only in Seattle, but also nationally. And it is really important to clarify the difference. And the difference is in the question of political ideas and strategy and approach. That's where the difference lies. And the reason I clarified that is because our ideas, which have clearly been put to the test and have succeeded, flow from the ideas of Marxism and or scientific socialism, as I said.
Many people in this resurgence or this building up of left consciousness and anti-capitalist consciousness around the country are questioning, though, the role of electoral politics in general, and especially where socialist activists should commit their energy. And one could talk about this recall effort as both a vindication of engagement with electoral politics, as well as kind of an underlying exposure of the problems of electoral politics. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, there's no question that we need, it's absolutely true. We are not going to win progressive victories like Medicare for all, or even the federal $15 minimum wage, by relying on what you would call electoralism per se, meaning putting our faith in elected representatives and saying, okay, can you do this? Obviously, the squad have completely failed in delivering any of the things that they stand for. And I don't question their intention so much as, asking the question, does that approach even work? So to the extent that ordinary people, young people, are skeptical of electoral politics, it is completely understandable, because the Democratic Party is a party of the billionaires. It is a road for betrayal. But I would describe this problem not as electoralism versus movement. I would say that in order to win victories in general, we need mass movements. But everywhere we go, there will be a question of leadership that will be raised. And then when you have leadership, you have accountability. I don't believe in this idea, and I find this a mythical idea of leaderless movements. And a lot of people on the left are tempted to think of movements as, successful movements. Movements will be successful when nobody is a leader. Well, that doesn't make any sense, because there will be some political ideas that will rise to the fore as the most important ideas. So in that sense, there will be leadership of ideas. And the only question is, in my mind, is not whether or not there will be leading ideas. The question is, are they the correct ideas? So in other words, whether you're talking about city council or US Congress, whether you're talking about labor movements, or you're talking about social movements, not explicitly organized, but movements arising out of social anger, like the Black Lives Matter movement. No matter what movement you talk about, there will be leadership, and it brings up the question of accountability. And so I find posing it as electoral versus something else as a false dichotomy. It doesn't actually point towards the problem.
Uh, on Twitter Friday morning, you posted, before talking about the results in Seattle, about the union victory for Starbucks workers in Buffalo. And you said, if a small group of workers in Buffalo can beat Starbucks executives to form a union, you can be sure organized power of the working class can change society. And you congratulated those workers. Now, if you have more than 280 characters, what else would you like to say about the significance of that, and maybe how that cohered with things that were going on the opposite coast?
I think that was an important victory, because it is the beginning of hopefully the beginning of the unionization of workers in a major corporation like Starbucks. And Starbucks, like Amazon, Starbucks executives and the multimillionaires and billionaires who own the corporation have also, just like Amazon executives, used the playbook of union busting, anti-union efforts repeatedly. And so for the workers to win that in the face of that is extremely important. And it sort of that happening on the same day as us getting ahead in the fight against the recall, it really showed you the potential of what's possible when workers get organized and fight back. And that was the point I was trying to make, that we see glimmers of what is possible, but we need to unleash the full power, the latent power of the working class. And again, that relates to your previous question. We are not going to have successes unless we hold leadership of, whether it is elected leaders in City Hall and Congress, or elected officers in the labor movement, or unelected social movement leaders, unless we hold all of them accountable. And the only way to do that really is to have a serious discussion and debate on ideas and strategy. What is the strategy to win victories? What are the strategies that have failed working people in the past? All of that needs to be discussed.
Along the same lines, there were many groups involved in pushing back against the recall effort there. And what could you say right now about the importance maybe of left unity and some of the challenges, as people discover socialism? Obviously, they're discovering it in different ways and maybe in different nodes. And so you have organizations like DSA and Socialist Alternative, and with both internal kind of differences, but also maybe coming together in efforts like resisting your recall.
I mean, as I said in my election night speech, which your viewers are welcome to read on Socialist Alternative website at socialistalternative.org, I am both a member of Socialist Alternative and of the Democratic Socialists of America. Many other of my fellow Socialist Alternative members are also members of the DSA. And we believe that both organizations are important. The DSA is what we would call a big tent socialist organization, where there's different trends of thought related to socialism, and also that translates into differences in different ideas in what the strategy is to go forward. Socialist Alternative is a revolutionary Marxist organization, and I believe both organizations are necessary. And in fact, both organizations have experienced unprecedented growth in the last few years, and it really shows the opening for socialist ideas and the hunger for political ideas and politicization that is experienced by young people. So we should, the last thing we should do is underestimate the opening for the socialist movement. But I also believe that it is important that we have, as I was saying earlier, a serious discussion and debate about the way forward, and what kind of socialist ideas can succeed. And that is why I strongly believe that inside the DSA, we need the growth of Marxist ideas, and that is in no way counterposed to left unity. As a matter of fact, Marxists have proven, and we have shown this in Seattle over and over again, the most effective to have the most effective approach towards a principled unity. And that's very important. We believe in principled unity, meaning unity when we are confident that that approach will further the interests of the working class. So that means often not having unity with the democratic establishment, not having unity with big business always, because their interests are completely counterposed to the interests of workers. And so the question of how to achieve principled unity is the crucial one, and that is the kind of discussion we need to have.
I appreciate you being willing to go to so many different spaces with me in all of these questions. I wanted to ask a question about the legal establishment, and particularly on Friday, you talked a little bit about the Washington State Supreme Court and how the role that they played in enabling this far-right counter offensive against you and the movement. And I couldn't help but think about the federal courts and the US Supreme Court's attacks on voting rights and other open anti-democratic legislating from the court. And I was wondering if you wanted to talk about the role of the legal system in upholding that kind of suppression, and what strategies we can have as we build mass movements to resist that, and the role of the courts in that fight.
First of all, we have to recognize, and this is why being a Marxist and having a scientific approach to assessing capitalism is so crucial, is because that helps you to understand that it's not this or that corporation or this or that institution under capitalism that serves the interests of the ruling elite and oppresses workers. It's every institution. So in other words, we faced the most undemocratic election through the recall election being scheduled between two of the most traveled holidays, the first ever December election in Seattle. That was, and we knew that was blatant voter suppression, because unusual election dates automatically disenfranchise people of color, working people, renters, and so on. And so it was geared towards voter suppression. There was no doubt about that. But the reason it was even possible for the recall campaign to put this on the ballot in December is because the state Supreme Court themselves inexplicably delayed their ruling by over 3 months. This has never happened. It is unprecedented. And so do we need a conspiracy theory to understand how capitalism works? No, absolutely not. It's in front of us. What it shows is that we cannot rely on any institution under capitalism. In other words, we have to fight, we as working people, as oppressed communities, absolutely have to fight for every reform possible, like the Civil Rights Act that was fought for and won by the civil rights movement from the 40s to the 60s. But just like Martin Luther King understood that it was not enough, that ultimately that capitalism is the enemy of working people, and that we have to unite working people across race to build a different kind of system entirely. That is what's posed. And so when you look at the role of the courts, as you were saying, it really reveals, it's part of what reveals how the system as a whole is corrupt. The system as a whole is, capitalism as a whole is rotten, and we need a fundamentally new system, root and branch. And it's not just what we faced with this recall attack. Look at what's happening with Roe v. Wade being under threat. Abortion rights were fought for and won decades ago, and they have been under attack ever since, especially through the growth of the right populism through the Trump presidency. And now we are seeing the US Supreme Court gearing up really to launch a major attack on Roe v. Wade. We need a fight back against that as well. We have fully 81 bills in Republican-led states attempting to criminalize peaceful protest. If these bills go through, it will be a testament to the reaction against the Black Lives Matter protest last year. So it's not just one or two examples. It is all, so many examples that you can see from the legal system. We just saw the shameful acquittal of Kyle Rittenhouse, and the statements made by the judge there, who said that the victims of Rittenhouse cannot be referred to as victims, they had to be referred to as rioters. I mean, this is just unspeakable. All of this is happening under capitalism. It really shows you that we cannot rely on the legal system. We have to fight for every legal reform possible, but we cannot stop there. We need to fundamentally change society.
All of this also, of course, suggests that as soon as you're done, as soon as you were done with this effort and successfully fighting back the recall, there's already, more things, on the agenda, always already on the agenda. And I'm wondering how you and the team are doing, whether you've had a chance to catch your breath, and how your energy level is moving forward as we finish out this eventful year.
Well, obviously, this was a historic victory, and it was the product of the incredible dedication and self-sacrifice by hundreds of people, socialists especially, but not only socialists, so many working people who may not necessarily identify as socialists, who agree with us on many of the things we've been fighting on and winning, and understood that this was a threat not against me but against working people as a whole, and that if the recall were allowed to succeed, it would actually turn into a bigger backlash nationally as well. They will go after leaders when they are emboldened, movement leaders when the right wing and when big business are emboldened. And so no doubt all of the people who fought to win this incredible victory need a vacation. But coming back in January, we are going to redouble our efforts to win rent control in Seattle. As you know, all of this year, we've been helping to build momentum around it. In the summer, we collected 15,000 signatures on a petition for a strong rent control policy in Seattle. And so that will be a major fight. And as you alluded to, it's not going to be a straightforward thing, because we don't expect the Democrats on the city council to support rent control. It will require a major organizing and mobilizing effort by renters, building by building, but also by the rank and file in the union movement to stand up for renters' rights and rent control, as they have done throughout the 8 years that we've been in office. So we have a long and difficult road ahead. But your question also is a reminder of how, as difficult as it will be to win any of these reforms, rent control, $15 an hour federally, Medicare for all, none of this will be granted to us by the largest of the billionaire class or their political representatives. We are going to have to fight to win every single one of those, and it will be a tooth and nail combat, political combat. But none of those reforms is going to be enough. Anytime we win something, it will be snatched away from us as long as this rotten system exists. And that is why we have to fight for socialism. And that I would urge your viewers to check out socialistalternative.org to find out more about how we won the victories we won and what is the way forward.
Councilmember Kshama Sawant, thank you so much. Solidarity and congratulations.
Thank you. Solidarity to you as well. Really
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.